I love your skirt. Where did you get it?
It was my mom's in the 80s.
Vintage. So adorable.
Thanks.
That is the ugliest effing skirt I've ever seen.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of A Really Good Podcast with Greg and Liz. And today's episode is for the cool moms, not the regular moms.
Oh, yeah. So if you're like, this is the episode we were listening to. No, hold on. Hold on.
It is not. We're coming in at a whole different angle.
That's right. So thinking of this, when you brought this up, I was thinking to myself, okay, Taylor Swift becoming what, like a billionaire, the most downloaded human being ever, the Kardashians and the Vanderpump people, and Barbie being this huge box office $1 billion movie, right? It seems to me that there is this craving for the feminine right now, but that sort of goes against what we're fed societally though, where it seems like we're all kind of trying to get away from the feminine, and that feminine is not like the best way to go. But maybe all that pushback has to do with toxic feminine.
Yes. So actually, you were the one that brought up the idea of doing toxic femininity.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that's great, and completely hijacked it and was like, let's talk about Mean Girls. There are a lot of different ideas about toxic feminism. Kind of the pushback of when you start to get really entrenched with a lot of feminism and women in the media, like you were just talking about, there is going to be the other side of it. So let's get into what the actual definition of toxic feminism is. Okay.
Can I take a stab at it first?
Yes.
All right. Before you give me the actual definition of some, I'm sure, psychologist, dum-dum, let me say that
That's your people, Greg.
Yeah. So I know, you're right. So the toxic masculinity, we beaten that to death. And when I talked about that in the past, it's almost like I think of like what masculinity is, or like ideal masculinity, whatever that means to the individual. And that's twisting that and like using it for aggression could be good, right? But aggression for the wrong reasons isn't good. So when I try to think of things that are like the feminine, like, you know, beauty, and maybe being too obsessed with beauty is toxic. Not valuing others might be toxic feminine, like self-importance for some reason. And this might just be me being completely, and you'll tell me if this is just wrong, but like the rise of OnlyFans and like this over-sexualized Kardashians, and I don't know. Girls are bullies in a very different way.
So you think the rise of OnlyFans is toxic feminism?
I think it is. I think it's using sexuality in like a twisted way almost.
To make a fuck ton of money.
I know. It's complicated. And
I kind of consider OnlyFans to be a little bit taking back their sexuality. They're saying, not only am I going to put myself out there sexually, you're going to pay me for it, and you're also not going to touch me. You're going to stare at me with a computer screen.
That makes sense. But for some reason, it's always followed with, I don't know, is it objectification? Is it, you know, or is someone valuing it? And then people are going to make comments. It's going to be just like any other Instagram / I don't know. It is something, maybe that's just my old school sort of thought process.
You do have a little bit of a more conservative take on these kinds of things.
I'm
but
older.
I don't think that you're going to get as much blowback as you think you are from that. Basically, toxic masculinity is adhering to common gender roles. And that's men have to be strong. They can't cry. They can't be sensitive. And is it toxic feminism or femininity?
Either way is good.
Okay. Toxic feminism is kind of the same thing. This is the literal definition, and then I'll get into what I believe it to be. It's kind of a similar thing that women have to be demure. They want to be mothers. They should wear pink, stupid stuff like that don't really mean anything to anyone. But as I got more into it, I started to realize that a lot of people have different definitions of what this is. One of the ones that I found to be the most relevant was that toxic feminism is a term used to describe behaviors, attitudes, or beliefs within the feminist movement that are harmful or exclusionary. And that is a perfect lead-in to what I really want to talk about, and that was Mean Girls.
Mean Girls. And can I say something about that too? Because I think Mean Girls is the culmination, and not just Mean Girls, like the movie Mean Girls, right? It's like this culmination of all these great teen girl bully movies. Like I think when it comes,
fantastic.
Like Dazed and Confused.
Yep.
That's
a great one.
It's in that Heathers.
Yep.
Clueless on some level?
Yeah, Clueless. I went through a lot of this because one of the things I'm going to talk about is the different roles that girls have in cliques. And there's obviously a lot of that in the media. And so I tried to pair up the different roles with different people. And Clueless definitely has it to an element, but it's not so much about female I mean, I guess it is about female friendship, but it's not really. I mean, Cher is great. Yeah. They're not mean people. They're not exclusionary. Like, she really does try to like include everybody. So it's not really like a perfect
No, I mean, but that relationship she has with one of the other girls there, another girl, and they kind of like catty to each other. I don't know.
Dion, another girl? You don't.
Not
You
Dion.
don't.
Dion's great. Are you kidding
Oh,
me?
Ty? Are you
There
talking
was,
about Ty?
yeah, no, not Ty either. Although that was a little, they were a little, I don't know. It was a little uncomfortable with how they were treating her, to like as if they were like, as if, wow, that's Freudian.
As if
Right?
she was their pet.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, though, there was one Christmas vacation when I think it might have been my junior year in high school where me, John Eric, and Mike Burke watched this every single day of it.
I believe
I,
it.
w- I was obsessed with Dion.
Yeah. I
was in love with
mean,
her.
she's got those beautiful eyes.
Oh,
Just like Rob from
stunning.
Milli Vanilli.
Dude, can you imagine you know what I mean? If they crossed eyes, I don't
If
know
they
what would happen.
reproduce.
What other movie? Election. Have you ever seen that?
Yes, Reese Witherspoon. She's
That's
a
actually
psycho.
pretty
She's
pretty
a great.
great.
She's a great actress.
What about Cruel Intentions? I'm sorry, I keep cutting you off, but
We
they're
do have
popping
to get
in.
into the topic at hand
Okay.
at some point.
All right. Yeah.
But no, Cruel Intentions actually was another one. But it's also, there's no cliques, there's no groups. So that's not really like relevant to what we're talking about.
Okay, fair enough.
So I went a little bit further, as one does,
course.
as I do. And I read the book that was the inspiration for Mean Girls called Queen Bees and Wannabes by Rosalind Wiseman. And I got a lot of information in it. So this is going to be a cross between talking about Mean Girls and also discussing the idea of Mean Girls, the psychology of Mean Girls. And at the end, we're going to give some tips for parents on how to deal with Mean Girls if your daughter is targeted by them and also if your daughter is them, because that is maybe even more tough. I don't know.
Yeah. If your daughter, why do you see signs that maybe your daughter could be a mean girl? Because I have a mean girl in the house.
Did she listen to this?
No, that's how I know. No, not at all. She would never do anything.
No, my daughter actually, I mean, but this is one of the things that we're going to get into is that like you don't really know. A lot of parents think like your child isn't involved in this at all, but at the end of the day, I don't think that there's anybody in this world that hasn't been mean to somebody or been a victim of somebody. I mean, there's very sweet people out there who probably have never been kind of mean to someone, but like I'm not one of them.
I just think that there's a reason why there's no movies called Mean Boys. And I think that girls tend to have this ability to bully more severely and harshly. It's like emotional warfare.
Well, exactly. Emotional warfare is a great way to put it because girls, and they say this at one point in the movie, girls, when you are going to do stuff like this, you have to be sneaky about it. And the thing about it, I think with men, like you'll get into a fist fight.
And then you can move on with the night.
And then you
Like,
move on.
I've been into fights in like even in bars. The most devastating thing that ever happened to me on my way into a bar one time, it was these two girls walking out. You know how I like a cardigan. And one of them says to me, this is like the most damaging joke too. She says to me, nice sweater. Where'd you get that? Weather vane? It was like a genius joke on so many levels. I'm like, first of all, yeah, it kind of looks like I did. Second of all, that's a woman's sweater shop, I think. It just took me out. I took it off.
Well, also, like, it probably hadn't been open in like 10 years.
Which also makes it very funny, you know?
I know.
That might have been the one that got
No,
away.
I would say that myself personally, like I've been on every end of the spectrum. Like as we go through the different roles in the clique and the different things that can happen to you, I've been a mean girl. I've been a target of a mean girl. I've been a bystander, you know, like I 100% will take responsibility. One thing I want to talk about really quick. So this book, Queen Bees and Wannabes, it is the inspiration for Mean Girls. It has been said across the board that it is 100% the inspiration of it. If you read it, you're reading scenes from the movie when you're reading it, like the way she talks about things. She was only given $400,000 for selling her rights to the book material. And she had a partner contract that entitled her to extra money pending the success of the movie. And Paramount has told her repeatedly over the last 20 years that they did not make any profit from this movie and have not given her any more money.
It's called classic.
How fucked up is that? It was in her contract.
Ugh.
The movie had an $18 million budget and made $130 million.
So they did all right.
And Tina Fey actually is kind of part of it. She's like considering taking legal action against them because when they did the musical, the new movie, she didn't get anything additional from that.
Who, Tina Fey or that woman?
The woman.
And so is Tina Fey being a mean girl?
Kind of. And that's like, it's funny. That's one of the articles I read about it, that it's kind of like, for all you talk about uplifting women, it's not a great move, you know? She said she went to the premiere party of the musical and everything was so lavish at the after party. She realized that the after party cost more than what she made for the source material of the book.
That's so great.
And
so
she,
listen,
like,
you glossed over something pretty quickly. And I wanted to say, like, that version of the mean girl that we seldom think of. And you say that you've been one before. And I think if you're a young girl and maybe you don't want to be a mean girl, the stand by mean girl, where, like, you know, where you see
stand
mean girl
by.
yeah. When you're
like,
when you're watching mean girl that's right. Sure. Hey, tomato. Okay. You stand by, you're a stander by, and you notice that and you don't say anything, which is really hard to do.
There was one part in the movie where I can't remember who it was, said there's people who do evil stuff and people who see evil stuff and don't do anything about it, which I thought was good. But we're going to get into all of these roles as we talk further. So let's get into it. First, we're going to talk about the cliques. And I thought this was best exemplified in the cafeteria scene when they list off all of the different groups and where everyone was sitting. I thought I'd list out some of these groups that they talk about. Okay. So don't fault me for this. It's pretty offensive, but it was in the movie, which, by the way, did you notice that Rachel McAdams said the R word like 5 times in the movie?
Yeah. Also, I didn't realize this was pre-Notebook. This is like her launching pad.
It was. She did Mean Girls and then The Notebook and then Wedding Crashers.
Wow.
Speaking of a run, who were we just talking about that had a good run?
Oh, wow.
Oh, Winona Ryder.
Yeah, she also.
Okay, so this is the list of the cliques in the cafeteria scene. Freshmen, preps, Asian nerds, cool Asians, JV jocks, varsity jocks, girls who eat their feelings, girls who don't eat, desperate wannabes, which included somebody in a wheelchair and a little person, which I found to be pretty offensive. And then the plastics. I don't think that people really pair off as much in that tidy group.
They did. I think in our high school, we went to different high schools, but I think in our time, they did pair up like that. There was this very cliquey groups. Nowadays, I think it's different.
Yeah. Nowadays, it's more like the end of the movie.
Yeah. It's kind of a bummer. I don't know. I feel like a little, you know.
You want people a little more segregated, Greg?
Suffering makes people better sometimes, I think. You know, going through a little turmoil makes you a better person sometimes, I think.
Yeah, sure.
I'm just going to leave that alone.
We're just going to move on here. So a common definition of a clique is an exclusive group of people who are close friends. But the author of the book believes a better definition is a platoon of soldiers who have banded together to navigate the perils and insecurities of adolescence. There is a chain of command, but they operate as one unit in their interactions. And the group cohesion is based on an unquestioned loyalty to the leaders and an us versus them mentality.
Prison gangs.
Yeah, absolutely. As in prison and anywhere else, it can be a good thing. Let me say this right now, that I'm going to mostly talk about girls. This is not obviously exclusive to girls. It can be inclusive of men. The book was completely focused on girls. It was also written in 2002, so it was a different time. So
yeah, but it's okay.
I'm just going to continue to talk about girls, daughters, and you can take what you will from this, but I'm not trying to leave anybody out. I'm not trying to be exclusive. As we'll find out, that's not a good thing. Being in a clique can be a good thing. They're natural. They allow girls to bond together, share secrets, have a group of friends they can trust. But it can also be dangerous because they teach your daughter to exclusively depend on members of her clique when she's in trouble instead of her parents. They can also cause groupthink mentality, which can lead to problems as they get older, or one person decides to branch out and lead to hurt feelings.
Okay, I could see that. Yeah, it is natural to form, almost be like tribal.
Yeah.
Because there's safety that way.
Yeah.
I guess, all right.
Yeah, definitely.
Were you part of a clique? Were you in a clique?
So I definitely had friends of a certain group that we all kind of hung out, but I had other friends too. And like most of my friends that were of the group I was in were people that were in my neighborhood. So like most of the people I was friends with in high school, I would say like 80% of them were people that I graduated elementary school with. So yes, but like it was more of a location thing. And then I had a few others. The roles in the clique are important because of the positions of power, and the positions of power really lead to the group dynamics in terms of the people who are at the top of the totem pole generally are not the ones who are going to be taking responsibility if anything goes wrong. And the people who are lower in the totem pole generally won't speak out because they don't want to lose their position. And the lower you are in the totem pole, the easier it is for you to get kicked out of the group.
Yeah, and here's something that I think would be like a bad byproduct of being in these cliques. It's like the people who are in the lower totem pole, the lower portions of the clique, they lose lose whatever their identity would be trying to be more like the leader of the group. Like there's like a set of like rules and laws. Not so much they have it written down, but it's you have to be a certain way and behave a certain way or you're out of the clique and then you're on your own.
Yeah, and that's a scary place to be. And I thought you saw a lot of that in the movie with Gretchen Wieners because Karen didn't really notice much about what was happening. Like she wasn't fazed by much, which I actually kind of enjoyed about her character. But Gretchen was so obsessed with her place in it and not losing her place in it. I mean, in the scene in the talent show when she moved sides and she was like, but I'm always on your left side. And it totally threw her off and she didn't know how to handle it. And when you're in that precarious of a position, that can be a really hard place to be.
Yeah, and that's Amanda Seyfried's, Siegfried's character is the less, I don't want to say the less smart one.
Yeah.
I agree. I did really like her. And I don't know, should she have had a better run? I think I would have expected more from her.
I mean, she's done pretty well. She was Mamma Mia.
She was Mamma Mia?
Well, she wasn't Mamma Mia. I think Meryl Streep was Mamma Mia, but she was the daughter in it.
Big Love. I loved that show. I think she
Big Love. Yeah. Was she a daughter in that or was she a wife?
She was definitely a daughter.
How about Gretchen Wieners is Lacey Chabet, who's the one that I was talking about was the voice of the young Anastasia that you didn't remember.
What?
Remember when I was like, oh, young Anastasia, it's Lacey Chabet. And you were like, who is that? And I was like, she's the youngest daughter in Party of Five. That was her.
Okay. So it seems like she's not even old enough to be Anastasia, but I guess this was in 2004. So yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, she was, well, it was 20 years ago.
Yeah.
This was 20 years ago. That's
I know.
horrifying. So the roles in the clique. How are these roles created? As girls become teenagers, the world becomes a much scarier place. When you're in elementary school, it's smaller. Your parents and teachers are really active in your social life. They're at school all the time. As you go to middle school or high school, it's larger, it's more overwhelming, and it happens at the exact time when you're starting to feel insecure and be more obsessive about your social life, and you're starting to analyze and learn social cues. So like it's kind of a perfect storm to make for insecure females.
Yeah, absolutely. You're really starting to be concerned about what other people think. In fact, that's all you care about.
The roles in cliques are pretty fluid. They can be changed, but a lot of times they're kind of set with where they are. So I'm going to go through the main roles that you can have as part of the clique. And then I'm going to kind of give examples from some Mean Girls and some other teen movies and TV shows. Okay. First, we have the Queen Bee. Obviously, this is the Regina George. The Queen Bee's popularity is based on fear and control. She tends to be manipulative. Her friends do what she wants. She's intimidated by other people. Her complaints about other girls are about how lame they are over like them being mean to her. She doesn't want to invite everyone to her party. And if she does, like if she's forced to invite people to her parties, she'll end up ignoring some of the people that are there.
Now, doesn't there have to be some element of attractiveness on some level?
Yes. She's usually very pretty. They can argue down everyone, including parents and teachers, which I thought was funny in the movie when Regina says that she made her parents switch bedrooms with her. So she got the master bedroom.
I remember kids being like so cool that like the teachers thought they were cool.
Yes, exactly. Or they can talk shit to their parents. I could never do that. I don't know about you.
No.
They're affectionate, but they can weaponize their affection. So they do that thing where like, if they're mad at somebody in the clique, they'll be extra nice to somebody else, but not in a way that you can point out like, oh, you're being mean. It's like, how could you say I was being mean? I was just being nice to her. Like it's a lot of gaslighting. They don't really give you the opportunity to speak up for yourself because they're like, oh, why are you so sensitive? Why are you being like this? They don't generally take responsibility when they hurt someone, and they can really justify their cruel behaviors somehow.
And the sad thing is here is beauty fades.
Yeah.
So if you've never developed like a personality to where you've learned the value of being nice to people and like, so it all comes back.
I know, but I feel like a lot of times with girls like this, they end up being okay because they learn how to like deal in people. Another example of this I thought would be Blair Waldorf on Gossip Girl.
You lost me, but I believe you.
They'll know. You guys know. The next up is the sidekick. I thought that Karen was a good example of this. Also, Dion in Clueless. She's the second in command and closest to the Queen Bee. Her power is tied up in the Queen Bee, though. So, like, she doesn't have a lot of power on her own. She gets bossed around by her best friend. Her best friend's the authority figure in her life. And she kind of feels like it's a two of them against everyone else. And everyone else is a wannabe.
Yeah.
And The good part about this one is that when she's separated from the queen bee, a lot of times she can change her behavior for the better.
And what the other girls in the clique don't realize is the queen bee needs all of them to remain in that position.
Yeah, exactly. She feeds off of that.
Yeah.
The next is the banker. This is the Gretchen Wiener. This is her hair's so big because it's filled with secrets. This type creates chaos by keeping track of the dirt. She gains trust by dishing out details in a seemingly friendly manner, but then uses the gained intelligence for her own benefit when the time is right. She's hard to detect because she's quiet yet strategic. She's never really the subject of the group quarrels, but is more of the pot stirrer that causes them, and then kind of sits back and lets everything kind of wreak havoc around her.
Yeah. So when you said banker, now I really thought of something, and maybe this isn't part of the cliques, but this is a real thing. So there was this kid who was just kind of an asshole, but all like the cool popular kids hung out with him. And the reason why I thought of it as banker, it's like he was driving a 2000 Jeep Grand Cherokee.
He was like good with money.
Yeah. No, but it was like 1999. So it's like this kid's got a brand new car because he had so much money that helped him be popular, because the other kids wanted to go to his house. They wanted to eat the best fruit snacks and do all the things that came with that, you know?
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. Having a lot of money will automatically give you a high place because you can buy your way into it, you know?
You know that better than anybody.
There were no perks to being my friend, okay? I did not have that kind of money. The next up is the floater. This is the one who associates with more than one group. They have higher self-esteem because she doesn't base her self-worth on one group. So like you kind of have a little bit more of a broadened horizon. She's respected because she doesn't rule by meanness. And if needed, she will stand up to the queen bee. She doesn't want to exclude people. Friends are comfortable around her and don't seem intimidated. And she brings people together. I thought Katie and Ty from Clueless were kind of examples of this, but I think it's more because they're new. I think a new girl or somebody who hasn't been there forever. I feel like it's easier to get sucked up in a clique if you have been friends with the same people forever. But
yeah, I was like best friends with this kid all throughout elementary school, really putting the work in, because I really thought this was the guy that's going to take, like, I'm going to ride his coattails to like be super popular. Ron Daigle, what happened? And then we got to
Ronnie Daigle, the firefighter.
yeah. We got to high school. We were both like 95-pound dorks. I was like, what the hell?
You were supposed to be my ticket out of here.
Yeah. Here we are.
And not anymore though, huh?
No, not anymore. I haven't seen him in a while. Love him though.
So next up is the one you were talking about before, the torn bystander. So this is the one who's like kind of nice, but friends with a lot of the mean girls. She's conflicted, constantly torn between doing the right thing and being loyal to the group. She's often in the middle of conflict because she apologizes for the behavior of the queen bee, finds herself in situations where she has to choose between friends. She's not really good at saying no, and she's kind of insecure and terrified to stand up to the queen bee, even when she knows that she's wrong. I couldn't figure out anyone from Mean Girls for this, but I was thinking, you've seen She's All That.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know anymore after Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead, so I have to like clarify. You know, Gabrielle Union in She's All That? Like she was kind of like that. She was really nice and she wanted to be friends with Lainey, and she kind of stood up to, I can't remember what the main girl's name was, but you're still sitting by and allowing this to happen. But I mean, you also have to think of the dynamic of high school. You kind of can't step out of line.
Listen, though, I hate to bring up Dante, but
no, you don't.
Right before you go into hell, there's people marching around with like blank flags. And that's when Dante asks Virgil, like, what's going on with these people? It's like, those are the people that didn't stand up for what was right or didn't believe in anything. So you end up in hell.
If you don't stand up for them, who's going to stand up for you?
Right. I know. So there is something really kind of important about seeing bullying and doing something about it.
Absolutely.
I think kids do that now.
Yeah. No, I think to an extent, for sure. Yeah. A lot of this also, you have to remember, this book came out in 2002. So there are elements of this that are completely different. The general idea is the same, though. And I do think that if you went into any given high school, you would see kind of the same things. So the next one is the pleaser / wannabe / messenger. So this is someone who's sometimes in the group, sometimes not in the group, maybe trying to get into the group, will do anything to gain acceptance, will dress like them, enthusiastically back them up no matter what. They tend to get into tricky situations where they're doing the dirty work. They can be easily dropped. They change who they are a lot of times to fit in, and they kind of just want to be included. I was kind of thinking maybe Damien a little bit, because he wasn't like Janice in that he was against all of it.
Yeah.
He kind of seemed like he wanted to be a part of it. And then I asked my friend Becca for some ideas because I couldn't think of someone specific. And she came up with Minkus from Boy Meets World. Because he always wanted to be friends with everyone.
How about Mike? He was a chameleon. When I left for the Navy, we were
This
wearing...
is not a famous person. This is one of Greg's
but we were wearing Grateful Dead t-shirts and Birkenstocks. And then when I came back 2 months later after boot camp, he had a backwards Yankees hat on and was listening to Wu-Tang with Joe. I mean, that's completely changing your identity.
I know. He's still kind of like that too.
Yeah, that's stuck, I guess.
Yeah. And finally, we have the target. So the target is the victim, made fun of, excluded, teased, feels helpless to stand up to others, feels like she has no friends, isolated. There are some upsides to being the target. They learn empathy and understanding for the underdog. They gain objectivity. So as they get older, they understand that everything is not so black and white, but the rejection often makes them feel helpless and ashamed. And I mean, I would say Janice, but I could come up with a million of them. Carrie.
Now, is this hierarchy in every clique? So do the nerds even have like a leader? And are they as insidious? Or
yeah, she gave examples of girls in real life that she interviewed for all this stuff. And one of the things she said is like, there were girls that were like, we have a clique, but it's a clique because we were all not included. Like,
yeah. And she's writing the book being like, yeah, cool.
Nice one. Generally speaking, it is pretty objective, I would say. Yeah. I mean, obviously not every clique is going to have all of these people. Some cliques only have like 2 or 3 people, but you can fluctuate through it. I think everyone's going to be a target at some point. Everyone's going to be a bystander at some point, you know? So next, I thought we'd talk about gossip.
Ooh, yeah.
Ready?
Whispers.
So gossip is the lifeblood of cliques and popularity. The fact of the matter is we all gossip. Like, everybody loves to gossip. You can say you don't like to gossip, and maybe you're not sitting there talking specifically about people, but you're still talking about something.
I'll admit I love gossip. I mean, I fell head over heels into Vanderpump. That's like a gossip show. It's like what it's all about.
I mean, it's one of my favorite things to do in the world. And the reason why we're so good at it is because we've been sharpening our skills since youth, because everybody gossips when they're younger. I mean, you think about high school, you're constantly talking about people. The difference between teens and adults gossiping is that while it can still harm someone or it can ruin someone's day to gossip as an adult, generally speaking, ideally, by the time we become adults, the impact on our lives is minimal, and we're not trying to ruin people's lives or tear people down. Like, when I gossip, I'm like talking to my best friend about something I saw on Facebook. I'm not spreading rumors about people or trying to destroy somebody's life.
Right. So there's a difference between rumors and gossip, I guess, like gossip being true and like, and they still know, and it kind of like takes you.
And like, if you post about it on Facebook, it's true.
Yeah. Or like someone posts something just kind of like vague on Facebook and you're like, oh boy, what's going on with this?
Get on the text messages to my few people. But when you're in high school, that is the point. People are doing it to target you, or they are doing it to really tear people down a lot of times. And the problem when you're the target of gossip is that the reason why it's so humiliating is because most people, especially girls, suffer from main character syndrome or imaginary audience syndrome. Have you heard of these?
No, I have no idea what that is.
So main character syndrome is kind of like something I've heard. I didn't really look up a lot about it, but it's basically the idea that you're the main character everywhere you go. But the imaginary audience syndrome refers to a psychological state where an individual imagines and believes that multitudes of people are listening to or watching them. So the example she gave is that like you're sitting next to your mom at a play and your mom starts clapping and it's really loud and embarrassing. And you're like, oh my God, this is so embarrassing. And you think that everybody's watching you and nobody gives a shit. At the end of the day, most of the time, people are not thinking about you. They're thinking about themselves.
Right. Is that like an exclusively teenage thing?
No, she said, though this state is often exhibited in young adolescents, people of any age may harbor a fantasy of an imaginary audience.
Okay.
That's kind of why if you think if somebody says something about you that you're going to go into school and everybody's going to turn and look at you. And it's like most people are probably wrapped up in their own lives. I mean, in high school, it can be if it's a big enough rumor, but generally speaking.
Or if you have a pimple.
Yeah.
That's when I used to think. That used to be the worst when you wake up and you're like, oh my God, every eye in the school is going to be on this thing. Or like,
and like, have you ever talked about someone's pimple before? Absolutely not.
Do you want me to be honest?
So I thought the best instance of gossip in the movie was the burn book. The way that they kind of went after everybody for these things that weren't even, some of them were true and some of them were completely not true.
Yeah, that's like tangible gossip. Like,
Yeah.
here's all the gossip in the school, like put down on paper. It's wild.
I know. And then to spread it out and like show everybody.
That's a Cruel Intentions moment too, though. That's a ripoff.
Yeah, I know. So reputation, gossip and reputation can't exist without each other. Reputations are a byproduct of gossip and they tend to trap girls. Eventually, girls will start believing their own press, and who they get tangled up with their reputation and image can be kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. So you see it with girls who are labeled as, say, the S word, a slut.
Oh, yeah. Why did I? Yeah,
That's the big one. But like they may end up being pressured into things because guys hear things about them, or they may make decisions that aren't the best for them because.
So the gossip itself put them in a pretty dangerous situation.
Yeah.
And you're right. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. They become the thing that whoever made up the rumor said of them. That's crazy.
I know. Exactly. And it happens all the time. I think one of the things that we need to think about is the fact that a lot of times your first bully is your parents, not us and not like everybody, but in general, a lot of people have their parents telling them, you're the crazy one, you're the wild one. They assign you with
And
a role.
What's really sad about that is those roles that they sign these, specific girls, which is probably just out of like insecurity, like we talked about with Dear Margaret, right?
Yeah. Dear Margaret.
Whatever.
Are you there, God? It's me, Margaret.
Yeah. Dear Margaret, are you there? It's me, God. So I just think that like it's sad because when you said that, the S word, I'm obviously not going to talk about it, but like I thought of someone.
Yeah, no, I was thinking the same thing. I remember there was a girl I went to high school with, and allegedly she had sex with someone in the woods when she was in 7th grade. And for the entire time I was in high school, and still to this day, when you hear that word, that's who I think of. And it's like, that's so unfair.
No, it's so unfair. Like I remember these.
She was like 13.
Yeah. 6th grade, someone was like, those two are having sex. And I remember it and I was like, they are?
Yeah.
What does that even mean?
Like this can follow you for the rest of your life.
Absolutely. It does too. Like it's something, a picture will pop up on Facebook and you're like, oh yeah, that's like the first thing you think of. And you're like, as an adult, you're like, that's not true. But like it did show up in your mind.
Yeah. Well, actually, it's one of the things she talks about is how older teens can recognize that you can get a reputation without doing anything. You can leave a reputation behind and they're more likely to back their friends. But the majority of younger teens believe that you're to blame for your reputation. You'll always be stuck with it and are kind of more torn about standing up for their friends. So it seems like the older you get, the more likely you are to understand. Because even as I said that, I thought of someone, but I recognize now that that's not
100%. Yeah.
And I mean, what she did wasn't any different than what most people did within a few years. So like, what's the difference? You know, what's crazy about it is that the guy that was on the other end of it was in 8th grade and I've never thought anything about him. So that's my own internal misogyny right there.
You're a toxic feminist.
I am a toxic feminist. I've said that I want to be accountable here. So I'm trying to be accountable that I am the problem and also the solution because I'm raising my daughter not to be this way. It may be too late for me, but I'm doing my best with her.
Yeah, it's too late for you. You have your reputation and that's going to stick.
I don't even know what my reputation is, but but the whole thing with being labeled a slut, which is honestly the worst of the worst reputations, like there really isn't much worse than that, is crazy because it's literally just by existing. Like if you have big boobs, you can't wear anything that's going to really hide them. It's virtually impossible to hide big boobs at any point in your life. People will think you're a slut just by existing as a female. And it shapes the way girls act, the way they dress, who they're comfortable being around, how they're looked at. And you can do nothing and still end up with a reputation.
Yeah, you still end up a 40-year-old sees your picture on Facebook and they're like, the first they think is like your reputation. You're at 13. That's terrible.
I know. It's awful. But we can learn from this. We can all learn from this.
Bringing awareness to it.
We're letting go of our internal biases. Yeah. We're going to let go of thinking that way about these women.
Slut awareness.
Next, we're going to talk about teasing. So almost everyone has been on both sides of teasing, but there are different kinds of teasing. And the kinds of teasing depend on the power dynamics of the friends. You can't really tease up the ladder. It's always the people kind of teasing down, generally speaking. The first one is good teasing. This is where everyone feels respected. It's what you probably do with your friends now. It's one of the cornerstones of a good friendship. It's someone who cares about you, who knows you well enough. You feel liked by them. and you don't feel like they have bad motivation. And you also can feel like if you ask them to stop, they will. It's more of a teasing with them, not at them.
Right. So you kind of like walk away and you're like, and that was some good teasing.
Yeah. It was you with your family at Christmas.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I thought a good example of this was Janice when she would say about Damien, he's too gay to function. Okay.
Yes.
So then the next kind of teasing is the unintentional bad teasing. That's where the teaser doesn't intend to hurt the person's feelings, but even though it's not malicious, once they understand that it kind of hurts their feelings, they will apologize. The reluctance of the person to speak up who's getting teased isn't a reflection of being afraid of the teaser so much as just hating confrontation in general. And so I thought an example of this was when Katie says about Damien, he's too gay to function, to all the girls when they're writing the burn book, that she's not intending to be mean, but as soon as she says it, she realizes, oh, that was kind of messed up. I shouldn't have said that.
Yeah.
So then the last one is intentional bad teasing. This is where it's used to put the person down, to silence them, to put the target in their place, uses things that you know they're insecure about. This is the like, why are you being so sensitive when like they bring it up? Usually ends with the target apologizing to keep the peace in the group. The sidekick and the wannabe do a lot of this kind of teasing in addition to the queen bee.
It's gaslighting, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's usually done to the person who's least likely to fight back. And there was tons of this in the movie. I can't really think of a specific example. I was trying, but
so some severe is like, what about the nutrition bar sabotage? Where does that
but that's
fit
not teasing. That's like sabotage.
Yeah,
that's like malicious intent. But it's punching up. So like, where does it fit in?
So Lohan is punching up. I'm sorry, what? I can't. Katie. What? Caddy. Okay. So she is punching up, but do we talk about how, there's like this Nietzsche quote that I think of a lot. It's like, whoever fights monsters.
Of course.
I know. I can't help
this
it.
Nietzsche quote I think of a lot. Okay, go on.
But it's perfect, right? So whoever fights monsters should see to it that they don't become a monster in the process.
Oh, and that's perfect for this movie.
Right. And that's exactly what's happening here, right?
But it's so easy to absorb that like energy. To
take them out, she sort of had to become like them. And then she became so much like them that she was unrecognizable. She lost her identity, the whole thing.
Yeah.
That's dark.
Yeah, it is dark.
So is she the villain?
No, I read something that said they think that Gretchen Wieners is actually the villain because she's the only one who doesn't learn anything or like grow at all.
There's a podcast, and not to shout out other podcasts, called like The Villain Was Right.
Yeah.
And it's a great podcast, and it does all kinds of movies in it. And it's almost like the devil's advocate for the villains in the movies. And I wonder if they have one on this. Probably.
No, that would be interesting because if you think about it, Regina George, I think it's easy to cast her as the villain, but I don't know that there's a clear villain in here because it's all just girls.
Well, it's like there's this other great quote where they say if you know someone's story, you can't hate them. So maybe if we get the backstory, what Regina George's childhood was like, what her life was like, she's this way for a reason.
Yeah.
Some insecurity, whatever it is. But then if you saw how her life kind of the trajectory of it and how it ends, I bet you it's pretty sad too.
Yeah.
So this is like the peaking in high school is a sad thing.
It is a sad thing. I actually heard I remember one time that was like, if you had lived their life, you would have done exactly what they did in that moment. And I thought that was really a good way to look at it because it's true that like until you've walked a mile in their shoes, to keep it simple.
This is called Quotes with Greg and Liz.
We're going to make motivational posters soon. So I thought we would talk next about some tips on how to handle these situations as a parent, because we are parents. And I think a lot of us are getting to that age. You apparently already are there.
I would love some tips.
Yeah. All right. So we have a few different sections. The first we're going to talk about is how to handle these specific situations of teasing, or if your child comes home upset about somebody being mean to them, that kind of thing. The first thing you need to do is to check your baggage. A lot of this is going to be hard for the parent to deal with. And a lot of times they take their own stuff from their childhood and put it into the situation. And that's not really helpful. And also a lot of parents will hold grudges more than if you talk to your parents, I'm sure they can come up with one or two kids that wronged you or did something and they kind of held on to it. So you kind of need to leave that at the door and handle these situations for what they are. The next, and this is one of the biggest things, is that you need to acknowledge what your daughter is capable of. All girls are going to end up doing some variation of gossiping, teasing, excluding, or other questionable actions. How bad it will be will vary, but at the end of the day, nobody is incapable of doing this kind of thing. And the parents who have the hardest time with raising teenage girls are the ones who kind of stick their head in the sand and say, like, my daughter would never do this. My daughter's too nice. And if you think that your daughter is too nice and she's never going to get wrapped up in any of this, you're wrong. Like, maybe not now that she's 11, but by the time she's 16, at one point or another, she's probably going to call another girl a slut. She's probably going to talk about someone. She's probably going to like make somebody feel bad about themselves, even if it's unintentionally. So you just have to be aware of that and realize that it doesn't make you a bad parent. It actually makes you a good parent to see things for what they are.
Yeah.
Don't use triggering words. They don't like words that seem exclusive. Clique. Don't use the role titles. Don't use the word reputation. These are all have negative connotations that are going to immediately make them defensive. Don't fly off the handle.
Like literally saying, like, I've heard that. I grew up with a sister, and my dad would say things like, you don't want to get a reputation.
Yeah. And it's going to be like immediately you're like, don't call me a slut.
Exactly.
That's what it's going to come down to. Don't fly off the handle and like contact other parents or the school unless your daughter gives you specific permission to do that, because it's going to lead her to believe that you don't believe she can handle her own problems. It's not going to teach her how to handle her own problems. Obviously, if it's something serious, it's a little bit different, but it usually will make it worse. Like calling another parent. I don't know about you. I've had the situation happen. It's never made it better.
No. And then you get the look when you come in school from the other kid, like, oh yeah, told your mommy, huh? Yeah.
So if your daughter is the teaser, you want to wait until she's alone. You don't want to embarrass her in front of her friends. You want to emphasize taking responsibility, not really allow her to blame other people, because the first thing she's going to do is say it's somebody else's fault or it's the girl's fault that she did it too, or for whatever reason. And you want to ask her to apologize and then follow up to make sure she actually does it, because a lot of girls will say they'll apologize and then they don't do it. So if you ask them about it, maybe it'll help a little bit. If your daughter is the bystander, so the one who's kind of on the sidelines and just watches it and is a part of it, but not really, don't ask her to choose between you and her friends. Don't put her friends down. Explain that you know she's in a difficult position, but she needs to take responsibility. And then ask her who is making the decisions in her life. Because if she doesn't want you to make the decisions in her life, she's probably not going to love the idea of her friends making the decisions in her life. You want her to make her realize that she is the one who is responsible for her own.
Yeah, they're discovering their values at this point.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
That's
and
why
the idea that somebody else is doing it is off-putting.
And if they're feeling like uncomfortable when someone's doing something kind of messed up, then maybe that's a good sign.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
If you know something's wrong, then you still have your good moral code. And if your daughter is the target, don't tell her to ignore it or that it's not a big deal. You kind of want to match her energy about it. So if she's really upset about it, be like, that's really fucked up, or whatever you're comfortable saying.
That's really fucked up. Should you see if the nerd clique is hiring? They might be missing someone.
Should you
like
relocate?
A banker or something. Yeah. Yeah.
They need a banker. You want to make her feel understood. And just remember that it's a really humiliating experience to be the target of getting made fun of. So like, she might not want to talk about it. And if that's the case, don't force her to talk about it, or let her go at her own pace. Don't force the issue. And that's kind of when it comes to teasing. So the odds are that if she does have an issue and she is upset, she's probably not going to come to you and tell you that she's upset. You kind of want to look for the signals that she wants to talk. And those can be hanging around where you are, but not necessarily saying anything, saying that she doesn't feel well or she wants to stay home instead of like going to school, volunteering with you to go on an errand or do something when she normally doesn't do that, asking you to watch something on TV with her or a movie, kind of mentioning a casual reference to a problem in conversation, or trying to get other people out of the house besides you. So those are some tips for how to communicate with her.
Well, I was just going to say, and if your kid is the floater, congratulations.
I know, right?
Right? I mean, isn't that where I feel like, I don't want to like brag, but I feel like I was the floater.
No, I kind of think I was too. Not because like I didn't get wrapped up in this. As I've said, I hit most of these roles.
Yeah.
But I did have a lot of groups of friends. So I didn't base my self-worth on one group of people.
No, I think I was just like, I didn't really fit in anywhere. I was in anything.
Loser.
Can't be with the jocks, not smart enough to be with the nerds. You know what I mean? I didn't weigh enough to be a cool kid.
Oh man. Opening the lines of communication. This is a big one. How to talk to your daughter when she's a teenager. This is not an easy thing, I would say. You really don't want to press because you will be seen as an invader of privacy and it'll be kind of a waste of time. And if you ask her how her day was, that's like really overwhelming. So you kind of need to be specific. You want to ask specific questions. How was English class today?
Okay.
How is it going with so and so? And this will also show her that you're paying attention to what she's talking about because really at the end of the day, they want to know that they're being heard. And parents have a really hard time with that. You don't want to use slang. And if you remember when they went to Regina's house and Amy Poehler was there, who was the cool mom, did you know that Amy Poehler was only 7 years older than Rachel McAdams when they filmed this?
I did not know that.
How about that? But Regina's reaction to her mom, who was a cool mom, was like, shut the fuck up. Nobody wants your mom to like talk in slang. I'm going to be honest, my kids are 7 and 9, and I don't even know what the hell they're talking about half the time.
No cap.
You don't want to wait until you have an agenda to talk to them. So a good thing to keep in mind, and it may be too late for some of you, so apologies, but the younger you start this, the easier it will be to continue. And kids don't always talk about interesting things, but like, if you don't listen to them about the boring stuff when they're younger, they're not going to think you're going to want to listen to them when they're older. So you kind of have to act interested about like Minecraft.
Yeah.
If you want them to open up to you when you're older.
That makes sense.
But you want to have focus time. So you want to take them somewhere they like to go with no distractions or siblings. Refrain from making any naggy type things about like what they're wearing, homework, chores, or giving them any suggestions for improvements. Like, you look so much prettier when your hair's back, because that says to them, you don't think I look pretty as is. And just kind of sit together and let them know that you are open to talking and you just wanted to check in with them.
Yeah, but what about, don't you have to be some kind of authoritarian?
Yeah, but there's a difference between like having,
like if you don't like what they're
communi-
wearing, and you're like, that's not, you can't do that because you'll
well,
be.
this is specifically for if you take them somewhere to talk to them.
Because you'll be like traffic.
But also, like one of the things they talk about is that, generally speaking, unless you are super strict, what she wears or how she looks or whatever is usually not trying to like piss off her parents. It's just what they want to do. And unless it's really bad, you kind of have to pick your battles.
Okay.
You know, if it's a shirt that like maybe you're not a big fan of it, but it's not that big of a deal, you have to go back to when they were toddlers and you're like, all right, fine. I don't really give a shit if you want to wear 7 different colors.
Yeah. Like Funky Brewster.
Yeah, you want to have Funky Brewster. And finally, with listening, this can be really hard for a lot of parents because a lot of them ask leading questions so they can share their opinions. A lot of times you're having an agenda. So you'll be like, what's up with your friend Kim? And you're not trying to find out what's up with their friend Kim. You're trying to find out information because you already don't like him and you want to confirm your preconceived notions.
Yeah.
And you just kind of need to listen. So talk as little as possible. Keep your answers non-judgmental. And if they say they want to talk, this is the biggest thing. Even if they say it's not a big deal, if they seem like they're ready to talk, drop everything that you're doing and talk to them if you can. And if you can't, set a time when you can. But like, don't brush it off, because if they're even remotely attempting to talk to you, it's a big deal. And this may be your only chance, because the moment they leave you, they're going to go talk to their friends or they're going to talk to somebody else. So if you may miss that opportunity if you don't jump on it right away, no matter if you have a lot of stuff going on.
I think that's the greatest message of all.
Yeah. Right. So do you have any final thoughts about the movie? I want to say Lindsay Lohan is incredible.
It's just that, you know, she was actually, you know what? She was great. She was really good and she was super talented. I was surprised by that. And she caught as much Perez Hilton type guff as Brittany. And look how damaging it was to her too.
I know. But I also want to say that her horrific parents played a large part in that too.
That's true. Yeah. So
which also was the case with Brittany.
Jingle Bell Rock, iconic.
Jingle Bell Rock. I loved the scene when she won prom queen and Tim Meadows kept being like, you know, you really don't have to make a speech.
Yeah. And I also think that there was a quote in there about feminism, and it's like, and this goes both ways, feminism and masculinity. Old boyfriends are off limits to friends. That's feminism. That's
the rules of feminism.
Yeah, that's the rules of feminism. Isn't that like sort of, that's kind of true.
No, it definitely is, for sure. I mean, let's not look at feminism through the lens of dating men.
Although I will say, we always have nothing but the finest things to say about John Eric, but he did marry my high school girlfriend.
He did marry your serious high school girlfriend. He also did reject me for the junior prom, so 0 for 2.
You know what, though? I actually talked to John Eric over the weekend. We did jujitsu. And that's true. That's true. And he had nothing but great things to say about you. He said, yeah. So I bet you he regrets that. It would have been
sure, because Lord knows where that girl he went with once.
Oh, he went to your prom?
No, I invited him to my prom, but he said no.
What? Okay, he had something else going on?
He had a girlfriend, but like...
Let me ask.
Not when I invited him. He like was new. So
I don't want to have to ask this, but did you have a reputation?
I don't know. Maybe. Honestly, who knows? Maybe he knew I was a mean girl.
Yeah. I knew you were a mean girl too. Do you remember the time that you approached me? I was a young divorcee, freshly divorced.
So we were like 26.
Yeah. And we were at some kind of outdoor, maybe Gatsby party in someone's yard. And you were not mean girl to me, but you were with someone. And I was wearing sandals, but I was working a lot outside. And she was like, your feet are so white. And I was like, okay. You know, it was just like, it was really...
That was my innocent bystander moment.
Yeah, I felt like you should have been like, or I maybe threw something my way because I didn't... Normally,
I was supposed to stand up for your pale feet. Was she right?
Because here's the rules on things. And this is what I tell my kids about teasing. If someone can change, like if you're like, hey, look, I don't want to be teasing or be a bully, and you do it in private, there's a booger on your face or something like that. You're allowed to do that. But you can't be like, look at the pimple on your face. My guess what I'm saying is if
you could tan your feet.
But what I'm saying is if you can't immediately change it, you can't critique it.
I didn't critique it though.
I'm just saying.
Did I even know if it was happening?
Maybe not. But it went on.
All like stood in a circle and like
that's not all she had to say. I feel like she started at the feet and
Who
just worked her way up.
Oh geez, that doesn't surprise me one bit.
She was a mean girl. Yeah.
Should I include that? I don't think she listens
I will
to
not protect her. Idiot.
All right.
So now like,
you're being mean.
I know. She hurt me. Cut it, leave it in, do what you want.
I'll see how it goes. I have no idea how long this went on for. All right.
Over an hour.
Any final thoughts?
No. I think that, like, seriously, you seem to think that book gave you some pretty good insights with your daughter, and I think that's something. So Queen Bees Wannabes.
I think that it definitely brought to light some things that you don't really think about, like listening, you know, how important that is and like what girls want. I recommend it for anybody who has a daughter over the age of 5, because I think that the sooner you can see this stuff, the easier it will be to combat in the long run. But I do think we are in a much more tolerant society that it's not so acceptable to pull a lot of this bullshit.
I agree.
All right. And on that note, please rate and review. Thank you to, what was it? Frog Button, the person that gave us our great review.
Button.
Frog Button. Yes. Thank you to Frog Button for your wonderful review. If anyone else gives us a review, we will mention it on the air, or updates your review if you've already given one.
Yeah.
Always love that.
Unless it's one of us.
All right. And we will see you next week.
And I wonder if I'm just built this way, 'cause every man that I know makes me feel like I'm to blame when it's over.